And welcome everybody to Talking Marijuana this week. Nice to be here. We're your hosts. I'm Barry Kramer. I am the operator of California Patients Alliance, a GLACA accredited dispensary here in Los Angeles.
And I'm Yami Bolaños. I'm a patient operator for fully accredited GLACA dispensary, Pure Life Alternative Wellness Center on La Cienega. I'm also the founder and president of GLACA, the Greater Los Angeles Collectors Alliance, the sign of excellence in medical marijuana in the city of Los Angeles since 2006. And with us on the phone,
hello, everyone. It's Don Duncan, the California Director of Americans for Safe Access, and I'm joining you guys today from our national office in Washington, D.C.
Hey, Don.
Hey, Don. And our in-studio guests today are Richard Miller and Sherry Martinez from Sacramento. They came all the way from up north for the protest yesterday in Cucamonga, and we welcome you today.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
We'll get to talking about the protest a little later. It was an interesting event and well worth the time that you guys spent to be out there. So we'll get into that and dissect that day a little bit a little later. And let's start out with our headlines for the week. Lots going on in marijuana news, both medical and legal. I was struck by how many, and I continue to be struck by how many articles I'm finding these days that are bringing in parents and the whole question of medicine for children. This week there was an article out of Atlanta, there was an article out of California, and I think there was an article also out of North Carolina, where... And we know in California we have legal medical marijuana. In North Carolina, not the case, and in Michigan, I'm sorry, it wasn't Atlanta, it was Michigan. The other story came out of in Michigan also legal marijuana, legal medical marijuana, but a lot of problems when it comes to the children, and shall we save our children? If only people knew that medical marijuana could help save their children, it would be a whole different paradigm that we're living in.
With autism.
But the one that really struck me was in Michigan, where they have legal marijuana, legal medical marijuana. There was a couple who, the gentleman suffers Crohn's, the wife was his caregiver, and they were growing marijuana enough for them to have. They were not selling the
to anyone else,
marijuana.
No.
And Child Services came in and removed their 6-month child from their home.
Yeah.
6 months old.
It's always a tragedy.
And they were complying with all of the legal medical marijuana laws that were going on in Michigan, and but it's the clash. We see this a lot. It's the clash of government agencies. One government agency says this is going to be fine and we're going to allow for this, and another government agency says this is how we're going to come in and get these people.
Well, Barry, it's the same thing we were talking about last week. Is the whole difference between having legal immunity from prosecution, which is one thing, and protection for your civil rights. And we're still not there with medical cannabis around the country. People, parents in this case, don't enjoy parental rights because of their medical cannabis use, and that's got to change.
It's got to change. This discrimination against parents is ridiculous. A month ago was when they took that little girl out of the custody of her parents and put her in with the foster mother, and the foster mother beat her to death. They took her away because her dad smoked a joint, and they put her with someone that beat her to death. That's not fair. This discrimination is running rampant.
That's legal stuff that they're doing. It's disgusting to me.
It's truly disgusting to take your child away from you. The child is actually with the grandmother at this point. They've allowed that to happen, but the mother can't be there. They feel they're being denied the bonding of the mother and the child at this early stage of development for the child, all because they smoke marijuana.
It's ridiculous.
Medicinal relief.
It's ridiculous.
It is just, it's hard to believe that in our country this is going on. And not that it hasn't been going on all the time, but it's really hard to believe when you're faced with it in black and white.
I, too, have had those problems with CPS with my own nephew. Being a de facto parent, he is no longer with me, and I've been in that battle for 2.5 years.
It's a legal battle that you're in right now.
Yeah, I've been fighting it. I just had court 2 weeks ago. The courts decided to keep him in the group home for another 6 months. We're looking at the case back in December again.
So
here's a child that's done nothing wrong. His mother's made a mistake. had them in my custody. They didn't like the activities, my activism, what was going on in my life.
Really?
And I no
So
longer have the
because,
child.
and even though it's legal here in California for you to do your activities, to be an activist concerning legal marijuana that you use for medicinal purposes, even though that's going on, that is their excuse and their reason for.
They don't come right out and say it, but that's really what the issue is about.
Are you able to bring that up in court cases that you're dealing
I've
with?
brought some of this stuff up, and I've been chastised by
Wow.
the judge and given a gag order not to discuss it. But, I have my First Amendment rights, and I will exercise them. Because there's a child that's
Everywhere
done.
except in court, right?
Yeah, this is
Yeah,
amazing.
exactly.
This is amazing, people out there that are listening. I mean, we really need to be active, and every week we tell you, write your congressman, talk to your legislators. It's so important. This is going on while you hang out with your families, while you go do the free things that you're able to do. People's children are being taken away. People are being locked up. Our medical marijuana fight is long from over yet.
Long from over.
We do not have the rights, as Don was so perfectly saying. There's a difference between writing the law and saying it's okay, and then allowing people to really have those rights and freedoms that the law guarantees them. And we're
Well,
not
sure,
there yet.
we have to be really clear with folks. In most of the medical cannabis states, not all, but in most, what you have is immunity from prosecution. Here in California, we like to say medical cannabis is legal, but if you want to split legal hairs about it, it's not legal. We're just immune from prosecution. That doesn't mean that you get employment rights or parental rights or housing rights or equal access to health care. Discrimination against medical cannabis patients in most of the states right now, most of the 20 states that have medical cannabis laws, discrimination is legal.
Running rampant. Running rampant discrimination
And it
in
comes
this day and
down-
age.
Yeah.
It comes down to the money as well, how can you successfully fight an agency that's big? You can't do
No,
it.
as an
It
individual,
winds up
you
breaking
certainly
you.
No,
can't.
but they're using our money, our taxpayers' money, to fight us, and that's not fair. I don't want to bring this thing
That's
up.
correct.
We're going to talk about the conference that we went and protested yesterday. But most of the people that went there, there was a $200 admission fee that was paid by the agencies. We paid for it.
That's
the citizens
correct.
of California paid for these cops to go and learn how to bust us and how to get us more in trouble, and we're paying for that to happen.
Not only are we paying for those fees, but we're paying for all their hotel costs, rental cars,
Yes, of course.
And may I
and
add,
food.
they were discussing to take away what we already voted in.
Yes.
They're trying to undo.
What we already
that's
did.
been a continuing theme here that somehow we
ridiculous.
all have to obey the law, and when they get a law that they don't like, they're able to just say, no, we're not going to enforce this, we're not going to go by it, we're not going to believe that it's law, we're going to do everything we can to change this, which is their right to change it if they want, but they certainly shouldn't be using public funds to do that.
No, I don't
my
believe.
tax funds
yes,
or other people's
I don't
funds.
think that they should use my tax money to enact laws they're going to use against me.
I have a
don't
feeling,
think
though,
that
if we
that's
really
fair.
took the time to dissect what our tax money is being spent on, a lot of us could nitpick and not really want our tax money spent on a lot of things that the government is spending our money on. I don't know how you ever resolve that problem. I mean,
But if
it's not
there's a
like
law in the state of California that says that medical marijuana can exist, then why are they using taxpayer money to, bring that law down, to bust people, to, figure out a way, to circumcise the law so that they can put people in jail and keep their job security alive and well. Circumvent.
Circumvent the law.
I'm sorry, circumvent. Yeah.
Circumvent, a little jumpy.
Circumvent, yes.
It's, my
I'm
people,
sorry,
it's
circumvent.
Been there, done that. That's all.
Well, it all comes back down to the money and their job. If they're not fighting these issues and trying to figure out a policing policy here in the state, they don't have the jobs. They need to start focusing on the crimes that haven't been solved that are more important, like rape,
yes.
murder,
Yes, absolutely.
absolutely.
robberies. I mean, all that needs to be addressed. Instead, they're focusing their attention on the medical marijuana because there's money there.
There's money
But
there.
it's proven there is no justifiable way you can justify the way the government is treating the war on drugs.
War on drugs.
There's no one.
Well, they seem to be getting called up on it a little bit more through some of our government agencies. We just had John Conyers, right, Don, bring up our Attorney General before the judicial committee?
That's right. Yeah, we just had some really historic hearings out here where the Department of Justice was sort of called to task on their conflict between medical cannabis and cannabis laws in states where it's legal and the federal law where it remains illegal. So that's actually that was many years in the working. And I know sometimes it feels like when we badger our elected officials and email and write and call and visit that it's not making a difference. But over the last 4 or 5 years, we've been saying to them, amongst many other things, have a hearing. You know, let's get this before Congress. And finally, it went before Congress.
So do you think that hearing carried any weight, or what was the result of it? I mean, that happened last week, and I mean, we heard a couple of things, but can you say
just last week, so it's way too soon. Remember, new bills won't be introduced in Congress until next year.
Right.
But these things are all incremental steps along the path, and so we're better off having had hearings than not having hearings because we got great media coverage out of it. Some of the congressional representatives who were sitting in those hearings, we hope, got educated on the topic, and the DOJ got a little schooling on how out of line they can get. So these things matter. Now, whether or not there's a direct connection between those hearings and a piece of legislation, I don't know. It's too soon to know yet. But even if we don't get a piece of legislation, it was an important stepping stone, and that will make the next step easier.
We did get I thought, an important news out of that hearing where the Attorney General's office, the DOJ, said that they would be trying to fix the banking problem.
I did see that, and that may be where we see ironically, it's not to help parents who are losing their children, but to help people keep bank accounts. But that is some progress.
But it's an important issue, and let me explain it a little bit.
It's a very important issue for us.
But
yeah.
Here in California, actually all over the country, the federal government has pretty much blocked banking institutions, all banking institutions, from working with the medical cannabis industry, even in those states where it is legal. And so, as a dispensary operator, I have no bank account. I've been canceled from my bank accounts.
Closed. 5 accounts.
And I have no merchant services, so I can't have anybody process any kind of credit cards. So we're strictly a cash business, which seems to me...
And then the congressional representatives did point out in this hearing that what they're basically doing is forcing you to be less legitimate and less safe.
Exactly. All the things that they want you to be and complain about you not being, they're actually making the situation that you have to
be in that
you have to do these things.
Yeah.
So that was great news out of that.
Well, let's see if there's any progress with it, because one thing is for them to say that they're going to...
Well, it is, but the pressure that they're under is that Colorado and Washington are going forward with their legal marijuana, and they are going to have stores set up and open that people are going to be selling. And if there starts to be a lot of crime because these stores can only do cash transactions and people come in and rob them continually, it's going to look bad for the government that's not allowing businesses to do a legal business that the state is sanctioned and basically the government's sanctioned at this point. So I think there will be forward motion on that, but it can't come soon enough.
That's something we'll probably see in January is some new bill.
Is some new bill allowing for
banking to happen?
Or at least allowing the states to allow banking, which is a more likely scenario, is to say that, we're going to give the states some leeway here.
And speaking of the states and the children and all, getting back to that idea, there was an article, again, based out of North Carolina this time. It actually ran through a number of situations and different couples' situations with their children. But one of the things the article brought out was that, people say, well, why don't you take your child and move to
the state where they're allowing him?
Which is definitely an answer. It could be done, but not by everybody, and certainly not in every situation.
Well,
First of all, you're dealing with a sick child.
When there are no civil rights protections,
Right.
Exactly. There's no civil rights anywhere. So anyway, if you go.
So it's not that easy for people who know. I mean, now with Sanjay Gupta's documentary that's out there and many other news stories that have come out since that documentary praising the effects of concentrated marijuana, usually high in CBDs, but not necessarily high in CBDs, just a good concentrate of the marijuana has helped so many children. children that have 300 seizures a day,
Yes.
down to maybe 5 to 10 a week. We're talking about marijuana as a quality of life drug, and nowhere does it show the quality of life improves better than in children with autism. With other serious debilitating diseases, that it's really helped.
Epilepsy, yeah.
So you have these parents in all these states where marijuana is not legal, nor is medical marijuana even free you from immunity, and they are at their wits' end. They've gone through maybe 20 to 30 prescriptive medicines that have made. I mean, the side effects that these parents talk about from the prescription medicines on their 6-month to 5-year-old children is horrible.
Yeah.
And the fact that they can't turn to a plant that grows from the ground is ridiculous
It is.
in 2013.
And as a parent, you have a sick child, and that's all you want to do is make it better. And you don't care what you have to do to make it better or to give it the medicine that it needs so that he or she will feel better. As a parent, all you want to do is make your child feel better. And it's so sad that people are going to jail or not being able to do this with their children
or having
because
their children taken away from
them
because
they're trying
to
do the right thing. It's unconscionable that
We're going to
people
take a little break here, and when we come back, we'll pick back up on some of these topics and some more topics that were in the news, and we'll get around to the protest as well. So we'll see you on the other side of the break.
Upcoming shows to the John Lovitz Vodcast Network.
Welcome to FYI. It's Dimitri Young here with Robert Fick. Hey everybody, welcome to Talking Marijuana.
Hi everybody, Crabman's Rock and Roll Revival featuring Frazier Smith is on the air, in your hair, and going out everywhere around the world.
I'm Gary Garver, live from the John Lovitz Comedy Club.
This is the John Lovitz Podcast Network.
Hi, John Lovitz here. It's time to put laughter back into your life. Check out the John Lovitz Comedy Club, located in the heart of Universal Studios City Walk, Los Angeles, not Orlando. For tickets, go to thejohnlovitzcomedyclub.com.
You are listening to the John Lovitz Podcast Network.
And welcome back to Talking Marijuana with Yami, Barry, and Don, and our guests Rich and Sherry.
Yes.
Nice to have you here. So we were talking about families, all the articles that we're seeing about families being torn apart, being stressed because the government is kind of harassing them for their medical marijuana use and prosecuting them, which falls under harassment, I guess. In the articles and in Sanjay's documentary, I've been hearing a lot about CBDs. And I am a proponent of CBDs. We carry high CBD strains. CBDs are like THC in the, it's one of the cannabinoids in the plant cannabis, and there are many cannabinoids. These two, THC and CBD, seem to be the most researched at this point in time, since we don't have access to research for cannabis. And THC is the truly psychoactive component. It really will affect your brain much more than your body. And over the decades, last few decades, 30, 40 years, THC has been bred into all the new breeders are breeding for THC content. They like the smell, the glow, the punch that it offers, and have forgotten about CBDs. And the CBDs work in your body in a much more medicinal. They are the medicinal component of the cannabis plant, one of the medicinal components, and. So in these articles and in the documentaries and in all the recent news that I've been hearing, CBDs are talked about quite a bit. I think, though, and our little show here, I don't think will set the record straight ever, but the conversation seems to be heading to a place that I'm not comfortable with. That is CBDs, like I've had patients that have come in and said, hey, can I get a non-THC marijuana? I just want the CBDs.
CBDs and no THC.
Well, that probably can be done. the effectiveness of that is questionable. The complexity of the marijuana plant and the cannabinoids and how they work together in tandem is unknown because we don't have the research available that can work on this. But some of the people that
we do have definitely indicates that it's synergy between cannabinoids.
It's synergy, absolutely.
Dr. J.
Thank
Marcoux,
you.
who's on our medical and scientific advisory board, has been doing research in his graduate work regarding the synergy between cannabinoids, and it appears to be the case that these things need to work together, and perhaps other components of the plant, like terpenes as well.
Absolutely.
They all need to be there, and so that's why whole plant medicine is so important. We don't want to just take things out of cannabis and make pills out of it. What we want is a whole plant.
Right, because they don't act with that synergy. They don't act with all the benefit that you possibly
Now,
could
having
get.
said that, I will say this about our current cannabis supply in California and in the United States is that it's been selectively bred for high THC content to a degree that's not reasonable. And so we do need that pendulum to swing backward. CBD because there's too much THC in cannabis. The plant didn't evolve that way.
And I guess my reason for bringing that up is that I want the pendulum to swing and stop in the middle. I don't want our pendulum to swing all the way to the other side where all of a sudden we're not getting the benefit, or that people will only allow high CBD strains because that's the medical, it's going to,
all dispensaries need to carry the full range because you're going to need the THC, you're going to need the CBDs, and you're going to need the CBNs as well. And the terpenes are
those darn
extremely
pendulums,
important.
you can just hardly ever stop them from
Yeah,
swinging.
I guess they're perpetual pendulums is what you're saying.
The problem now, though, it's not I don't know if you want to call it a problem, but people are into CBDs because that's what Mr. Gupta said that is what works. And so it doesn't have psychoactive effect and you don't want to get your kids high. And so, you want a high CBD thing. And I think, this is a little bit of misconception going on, about what's going on. The high CBD medicines, yes, are good and they don't give you the psychoactive. But to take THC out and put more CBD in, I think that they should, like you say, let the pendulum be.
Right.
Let the plant,
the right
go forward.
Balance of that. And the people that are talking about it, I guess what I'm bringing up is that now the pendulum has swung, and the doctors and everybody that's weighing in is saying, I want, this
CBD.
this almost totally full CBD medicine. There's no THC. My child won't get high. But I just want to say, the 20 other medicines that their child is taking that cause temporary blindness, that cause nausea, that cause all the other horrible things
worse than getting
with
high.
their children. How is that worse than maybe their child laughing or giggling or feeling a little,
distressed
for an hour or so? I mean, really, it's almost as if people aren't in a real discussion. They're continuing.
Well, that goes back to that stigma, doesn't it? That it's one thing to experience a psychological effect from a prescription drug, but people think, if you get it from marijuana, it's somehow bad.
Absolutely, craziness on that. Let's see.
I do believe there's illnesses out there where it is more effective to have the higher THC, but I'm on a high CBD regimen, but I never go below 5.3 on THC because there are days where I want to medicate with CBD medication and work throughout the day, but not have the euphoric effects.
Exactly.
And that's like
you want to continue your focus.
And you're a nurse, correct?
No, I work for a therapeutic alternative in Sacramento. I do a lot of holistic healing medicines. I live by CBDs. 4 months ago, I was on 450 pills. Some of those medications for 45 years. Now I'm on 0. I don't even take an aspirin anymore.
Wow.
That's great.
And I was looking for a wheelchair. I've retired my cane and now use it as a propping stick in my car, more or less than anything. So I think the importance of high CBD medication is important, but I do think it's just as important to have the THC factor because there are illnesses out there where you need that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's finding that balance and making sure that we have access for the patients to have all ranges of medicine. There's some that need higher CBNs and CBDs and THC.
And that's what a dispensary should be about, offering all the medicine in that we're able to offer.
The full range, exactly.
Absolutely. All dispensaries should be carrying items like that.
That is correct.
You can't say enough about that.
Yes.
I'm a firm believer in the CBDs, but It's important, like you said, have a full range in the dispensaries and have safe, affordable access across the state for every patient in every community. And we don't have that.
No, we don't.
No, we don't.
We're far from it
Far
at this
from
point, although we get closer and closer, and we can't diminish the gains that the movements have, gathered over the years. I mean, we're in 20 medical marijuana states now.
Yeah.
When we started this back in 2007,
There was only like 11 or 12
there
of
were
us.
very
Yeah.
few,
Very
So,
few.
and certainly the awareness in the media is much greater, and slowly coming around to a much smarter awareness as well.
People are
the
more
more it's in the
informed.
media, the more you're going to start to
Well,
get the real stories out there.
It takes place out on the streets, the education. The patients need to come forward, stand up for what they believe in, because they're hiding in their closet and the public's not made aware of what's going on. And everybody needs to know what's going on. We
Yeah.
need to move forward. It's been almost 17, 18 years since we passed this law in
18 years.
1996, and yet we're still fighting with the state of California to get regulations on the board.
And
I
we
mean-
expect to have legalization legislation come up in the next, either in 2014 or 2016.
16, yeah.
And my biggest thing is exactly what you're saying, Rich.
haven't
It's like
taken
we
care of
haven't
medical
taken care
We
of
haven't been
medical
taking
marijuana.
care of
No one
medical
knows how to
marijuana
deal
yet.
with it. Law enforcement doesn't know how to deal with it.
Well, law enforcement doesn't want to deal with it because it's their job. If they're not arresting these people and trying to prove they're guilty, they wouldn't have a job.
Well,
It's about the money.
But job security.
to
About job
yeah,
security.
talk about
Absolutely.
how we were talking about it, though, law enforcement doesn't know how to deal with it, because what happens up in Northern California with law enforcement is different than what happens in the Central Valley of California, is different than what happens down here in Southern California or down in San Diego. That's a problem that law enforcement has, mainly because we don't have statewide regulations.
Exactly.
And I don't think we've talked about the fact that went down in flames here.
Yeah,
Did we
no,
talk
we
about that
we
last
talked
week?
about last week that it went down in
I
flames.
can't remember. So much
We
has been
did,
happening.
yeah.
So much has been
But-
happening week by week
they-
here that I'm not sure
Even
that
though
we hit on.
law enforcement in the north and in the middle of the state and the southern part of the state may all look different. Yesterday, all them fools got together and talked together about how to go forward to
Absolutely.
bust us. So and that's terrible that they were able to do that.
We need to talk about what happened in Rancho Cucamonga, but to set the stage, let's talk about what happened in Sacramento. You know, at the
Absolutely.
11th
Yes.
hour, the President Pro Tem of the Senate brought back a bill that could have established a framework for creating and enforcing
Absolutely.
regulations for medical marijuana, which everyone thinks is a good idea. There aren't very many people in the state of California who would say it's a bad idea to have strong regulations for this industry and for this field. And yet law enforcement still muscled up again and defeated that bill. And they eroded the support of the Democrats until we couldn't get a majority vote on this bill. And the reason they keep doing this is because they don't want anything that would convey any degree of legitimacy on medical cannabis in the state of California. And so even the most reasonable measure proposal that can come before the state legislature, they will oppose it. And so I call on our law enforcement to step out of the way and let this
To
happen.
get
but
out of
also
the
call
way, yeah.
lawmakers to stop listening to these lobbyists who are paid by law enforcement. These aren't cops, by the way, pounding the halls. These are lobbyists, lawyers who get paid big money to go do this dirty work. And they're eroding the support based on this sort of irrational feeling that they can somehow stop or roll back medical cannabis in California. And so they're really standing in the way, and they are organized. This is, I'm not much of a conspiracy theorist, but this is an organized conspiracy of law enforcement lobbyists.
Absolutely.
And it was right there in Rancho Cucamonga yesterday, was it not?
Yes, it
It
was.
was.
And that's where our guests were yesterday. We're going to go into that. We're just about to take a break, and let's do that. Let's take a break. Let's come back, and let's get into Rancho Cucamonga so we have a nice long period. We can talk about what happened yesterday, why you were there, what brought you guys there. We'll be back after the break to talk about Rancho Cucamonga.
Okay.
This is the John Lovitz Vodcast Network.
Upcoming shows to the John Lovitz Vodcast Network.
Welcome to FYI. It's Dimitri Young here with Robert Fick. Hey, everybody, welcome to Talking Marijuana.
Hi, everybody. Crabman's Rock and Roll Revival featuring Frazier Smith is on the air, in your hair, and going out everywhere around the world.
I'm Gary Garver, live from the John Lovitz Comedy Club.
This is the John Lovitz Vodcast Network.
Hi, John Lovitz here. It's time to put laughter back into your life. Check out the John Lovitz Comedy Club, located in the heart of Universal Studios City Walk, Los Angeles, not Orlando. For tickets, go to thejohnlovitzcomedyclub.com.
You are listening to the John Lovitz Vodcast Network.
And welcome back to Talking Marijuana. We are talking advocacy and protests. We were discussing the statewide regulations that were going on here in California. Last week were not voted on.
No.
It lost. And basically, the reason that we needed the statewide regulations and the reason we need statewide regulations after 17 years, 18 years here in
18
California.
years.
We were the first to come on the books with medical marijuana laws, and we still don't have statewide regulation. The reason we need it is because the federal government has stated that they will stay out of states that are
Have state regulations.
Have state regulations, have a regulatory system that covers 8 points that the federal government would like.
Correct.
And we tried to get that through, and it failed. And Don was explaining to us that it failed mainly because of law enforcement agencies that are against this.
And
it
mainly
also
only for
failed-
job security, because that's the only reason they're pushing back that we can see is that they want to keep their job security.
Right, and it also failed because of, if I'm not mistaken, the League of Cities here in California Cities was also behind lobbying against statewide regulations.
It is true. The League of Cities opposed this bill, although I have to say that the League of Cities opposed the bill at the behest of law enforcement. It was definitely the California Narcotics Officers Association and the Police Chiefs Association that were leading the charge against state regulation.
And
don't forget the lobbyist, John Lovell.
John Lovell.
He was
He is
instrumental
on the board
in
of directors
killing
of the
these
California
boards.
Narcotics Officers Association. So
Correct.
This is the
Very
lobbyist
effective.
who's working with he's the head lobbyist for the California officers.
He's not law enforcement. He's just a lawyer that collects money from them to do the dirty work.
And lobbies on behalf
He
of
really
them.
paints a horrible picture. He's a very, I would call him
Evil
an evil
man.
man.
He
evil
makes a
man.
lot of money to be
But
an
he makes a
evil
lot of
man.
money. We know that from a lot of the lawyers here in Los Angeles. Also, evil people just making money and not worried about the health of people, that this is really the main concern.
Only
Or the
worried
right-
about their pockets and how much they're lining their pockets with money in order in taking away rights from people. It's ridiculous.
So the thing that really got me about this state regulation and the fact that it failed and the law enforcement was against it and lobbied against it and League of Cities lobbied against it was that this statewide regulation, it's never going to be perfect. There were things that operators like myself certainly didn't want to see in regulations, but I would have complied so that we have state regulations so
And
that
we
there's
have the
really
protection.
something solid. Now, law enforcement and the League of Cities got what they have been asking for many years, and holding up, any kind of legalization move. They've been holding it up for a number of reasons. It all was in the state regulations, and they still lobbied against it. So they're live.
there is no appeasing them.
There's no appeasing them, and it was stripped away that they have any basis in truth for why they don't want these regulations, and because they were offered all the bones that they wanted in this regulation, and they still turned it down. So we're hoping to see that rise back up again here in California.
Possibly
in
in
the new year.
January, next year when the
the new
legislation
year.
starts again. We need to
But
push that through.
in the meantime, they were having in Rancho Cucamonga yesterday a gathering, a symposium of law enforcement against marijuana, trying to figure out, and the people that were speaking were people from our Attorney General of our state, Camilla
Jackie
Harris.
Lacey was there as well.
Jackie Lacey, who's
District Attorney in Los
the
Angeles,
city
right?
attorney in Los Angeles. And all they were talking about were ways to not implement legal medical marijuana
in
or legal
California.
marijuana for sure they don't want, but still fighting against legal marijuana when we know how much it has helped and helps to ease the pain and help to improve the quality of life of Californians throughout the state. And we're all for laws that need to be followed, people that smoke marijuana want laws, and people that don't smoke marijuana want laws. But we all have to follow what the laws are.
Exactly. And the policemen, too. The cops, law enforcement have to follow the laws as well, and they don't. You know, they're enacting their own laws, they're enacting their own legislation to be able to keep their job security, and we need to stop that. Yesterday, let's talk about yesterday.
Let's talk
It was really
about the
interesting. Yeah.
protest.
You guys came all the way from Sacramento. You and Sherry and a couple other friends of yours came all the way from Sacramento. You guys thought it was that important to come 400 miles to come to the protest. Why do you think it was that important, Richard?
Oh, I think it started back in September, end of August, when John Lovell pulled his tactics to pull SB 473, which was a very important bill for regulations for all patients in the state of California protecting their rights. When we saw the tactics that John Lovell used, we had a protest up there in Sacramento. John Lovell came out of the Capitol to go to his office and crossed our picket lines. And at that point, he engaged us, and we tried to talk to him, to convince him, educate him, to get regulations on board. It was at that point when John Lovell said that the medical marijuana patients were nothing more than Taliban terrorists that I realized how important it was that we get an individual like this that's at our Capitol lobbying out of power. So we thought it was very important to come down here to be a part of this, since John Lovell was the lobbyist for this agency holding this conference, to address these issues and make the public aware so that people can get off their couches, get out, make their voices be heard. Because we've been fighting this for 17, 18 years. We're not going to get any legislation as long as we have people like John Lovell there, unless the patients come out and fight for their rights. So that's pretty much why we came down.
That's awesome. And
I'd like to add to that and say my reason behind coming down was I am mad as hell.
Yeah.
And that was the name of the rally, and I'm sick and tired, and I'm glad to be here, don't get me wrong, but I'm sick and tired of having this discussion. How many years has this been passed and we don't have regulations? What other industry is like that?
Absolutely.
We really need to we have things like the internet now. Everyone, you can't lie. The lies are just dwindling and the truth is all coming down, and it's real. And the only way we're going to show support for that is by showing up. And I was willing, I say it as a joke, but I said I was willing to sell anything short of selling my body. I was going to get down there to where was it, Rancho Cucamonga. And so I went around to local dispensaries and I asked for sponsorships, and I approached Lynette Davies from Crusaders for Patients' Rights. She paid for the gas and the hotel room for the four of us to come down and show support.
That's great. That's great. That there's people that believe, yes.
And we're very thankful to Lynette, because Lynette has been instrumental in Sacramento County to keep us all focused, keep us charged. And I've been by her side lobbying at the Capitol for the last 3 years for regulations.
I got to protest with Lynette on a corner when we were in Washington in May as well. She's a great person, and it was a great opportunity for me to see advocates at work in Sacramento, not just in LA. So yeah, she's a good person. I think that one of the things yesterday that was so terrible, besides the fact that they were even having a conference, was the lack of turnout by the protesters. It was beautifully organized. There were speakers. It was so nice. In the beginning, when they first started setting up, there was 80 police officers there. That's your taxpayer dollars being spent unwisely. And making sure that the people there were not going to attack any of the children that were registered to the conference, which I still don't get why the kids were there. But they made such a terrible deal out of how the medical marijuana advocates were going to attack the conference goers and how it was going to be evil and all these things, and nothing happened. It was a beautiful, beautiful way to show how we were against what they were doing inside. But
peaceful protest,
a peaceful protest, yes. But there was hardly no one there. There was the advocates for Sacramento. There was the advocates from Long Beach, the advocates from San Bernardino, the advocates from Riverside, a couple advocates from LA, but no people. No patients. No one there to support. No one there to scream. No one there to protest what these terrible people were doing against us. It's so
as you
sad.
can see in some of the pictures, a small group does go a long way when you're loud and you're got big fat signs. It's really important to show a presence, and
it is important. And, it's frustrating to me. I've organized many events and been to many more, and it is very frustrating to show up an event and only see a handful. However, I want to say kudos to that handful who are out there, because one of the stories I often tell is about one of our very first protests we organized, a National Day of Action of Americans for Safe Access, and this was back in 2002, and there frankly just was not a national grassroots movement for medical cannabis. But we have one member in Dallas, Texas, who went out to the courthouse and stood there with a sign all by herself on the steps of the courthouse in Dallas. And I would be willing to bet, I'm from Dallas, and I know how people think there, they must have thought she was crazy standing out there with a sign about marijuana on the steps of the courthouse in Dallas, Texas. But an AP reporter saw her, snapped her picture, and the thing went worldwide. People, and the headline is, nationwide protest for medical marijuana. And that would not have happened if that one woman hadn't been willing to risk looking like a fool standing on the steps with a sign all by herself. So you never know. You just never know when you're in a small protest how that might resonate.
There was a time yesterday, too, right during the time when Lanny Sordo was the one that organized the protest, and he had many speakers, one of them Diane Waddles Goldstein. There was a lot of good speakers there. And during the time that the conference was on break, it was about an hour and a half, we saw them looking at us through the windows. It was really interesting, They were all watching us from the second floor and the first floor through the windows, and there was lots of them watching us, It was kind of funny, like we felt like it was like the zoo or something,
Well, that's good. And they saw you. That was the whole point.
Yeah, they saw us, and they saw that we were nicely dressed. There was nobody there with tie-dye. Everybody was very, professional looking. Everyone was very nice and friendly. We talked to all the policemen that were there. We said hi. There was a bunch of them sitting around with us because there was, a very strong police presence there against all us.
They were sitting around because there weren't any marijuana advocates going around beating up little children. Joints in their mouths, or really, they did their job well, huh?
At one point, it was 2 to 1.
It was 2 to 1.
Well, you know what we always do when we're counting the number of people who come to a protest is we count the police officers. Well, so that's plus 80.
Well, that was 160 of us there then.
And you're a very imposing group of people.
Yes.
You really look like criminals that would hurt the well-being of Rancho Cucamonga.
We're always peaceful protesters.
Did you see the shoe stores?
Yeah, the shoe
stores. I'm just kidding.
So, Rancho Cucamonga and the protest, do we feel that a statement was made? You say people were looking out at their break, so obviously they knew your presence was there.
They knew we were there to protest
see you
them.
when they were entering the conference?
I wasn't there when the conference started, but we were there during lunchtime, and they actually let them out through 2 doors, and we were in the courtyard, so they were let out both sides of us. So as they walked out, they were all looking at us, and we were like,
Did anyone from the conference come over and talk to any of the protesters?
There was some talking between the patients and the activists and the officers. It was light, but there was some talking. There was also some information that was brought out. A letter, kind of the tactics they used to keep us away and to stop our protest. But you're going to touch on that. Yeah. And just they were generally kind, wanted to get information from us.
Mm-hmm. Did they come out and talk about this letter? That we let's illuminate that a little bit. I don't know much about it. I just heard about it right before we got on the show. But there was a letter sent from somebody. But there was the Shirley Frost thing that you're referring to. All right, let's bring that out and talk a little bit about that.
Well, there was a lot of controversy with this conference. First of all, there was a few people that registered for the conference that were advocates, and I guess they Googled their names and they found out that they were advocates, so they returned their money with a letter telling them that, they were moving. First they said they were moving the conference, and then they said they had canceled it altogether. So we weren't sure what was going on. What we do know is that there's one spy that got in and is still there. She'll be here next Tuesday to tell us all about it. But I didn't see them go in. We saw them go out for lunch, and then after lunch, they kind of walked through the center place where we were there and kind of looked at us. But they walked slow and smiled. It was like they were like being brave, walking amongst us. But nobody said anything. The cops are the ones that talked to us.
So we're going to talk about Shirley Frost.
Okay.
And Shirley Frost letter. This is a letter that we don't know. We haven't seen it with our eyes. So this is an alleged
I've seen the letter.
Okay. And
but
just
I have
explain
not-
what the letter is so that our
Pretty
listeners
much.
know.
This
what-
is real. This is a documented fact.
It is a
Documented fact,
It is
yes.
a documented fact.
Okay.
That letter was sent out saying that the protests have been canceled or moved. There were a lot of issues targeting medical marijuana patients as being criminals, and
this, if I'm unclear, I'm thinking that our viewers might be unclear. Who sent the letter? Who is Shirley Frost? And what does she have to do with this letter?
she's friended a lot of patients on Facebook as being an advocate.
She's a phony person.
She's a phony
person.
person.
We don't know if it's a man or a woman. The name is Shirley
agent
Frost.
provocateur.
Yes.
Okay, so she's infiltrating advocates' emails and Facebook accounts.
Yeah.
And she posted on the event that that it had been canceled, and then it was moved to a whole nother day. Then it was moved to a whole nother location. And so I think that just the confusion and that even their scare tactics are what keep
People
a lot
away.
of people away. Our our supporters.
Supporters.
And
It's
I'm not saying
they
Well,
cause
you know,
the
yesterday
confusion.
morning on the way to Cucamonga, we were a little bit late, my friend and I was glad that we were a little bit late because I was a little apprehensive too. You know, we had heard so many rumors about what they were going to do and what their presence was there that I kept telling my friend, well, you know, when we get there, we're just going to check it out a little bit before we go down there, you know. And I feel like getting arrested yesterday, you know, and it just seemed like, you know, it was like a setup a little bit, you know, that it was almost like we were walking into a trap. And so,
yeah, you know,
And
I'll
that's
say
the
this about
purpose.
these letters, because in addition to pretending to cancel the event and move it somewhere else and pretending to change the date, they also sent just terrible, disgusting accusations against one of the organizers. And I've seen my share of this in grassroots politics, but usually when people do things like this, it's sort of the lunatic fringe of the people who are involved in this. These are professional people who organize this event. These are well-established lobby organizations, and or even if we disagree with them, they are typically considered respectable players.
Right.
And to see the Coalition for a Drug-Free California involved in just really allegations that are so gross that I'm not going to say them right now. That's how disgusting what they put out was.
it was really bad.
That is so unnecessary. And that really speaks to the kind of like visceral opposition that goes back to morality and stigma and such that we see with medical cannabis. I'm frankly deeply offended by these people, and I think it would be appropriate at this point for the conference organizers to apologize to the person that they attacked so viciously, and to apologize for lying about canceling and moving the event, to apologize for these terrible, terrible criminal and moral accusations against people. That's beyond the pale. You know, we didn't do that. We disagree with these people. They hurt us, and we're vocal in our opposition to them, but we never, ever launched those kind of really ugly personal attacks against people. Even John Lovell, I've always been careful to say I disagree with the man, I don't like the man, I don't support his values, but I would never, ever accuse him of the
Things
kind
that
of
he didn't
disgusting
do.
things that his people were
It's
lobbying
pretty
in our
sad that
direction.
they've
So I take issue with the whole thing. I think these people did
As well
wrong.
you should.
Pretty sad that people have stooped as low as they have. You know, these are professional people, educated people, and yet, you know, they're spewing poison from their mouth and they're being, you know, against this. It's so ridiculous. What are they
It's
so
one thing, if you
scared
want
of?
to disagree with what we say, that's the American way. We disagree with you, you disagree with us. But making it that personal and that gross and disgusting, that is wrong.
Right.
It's just wrong what they did.
Well, they were on the
I'm
wrong
so
track
put
to
out with
begin
this
with, 'cause they
organization. I
didn't-
actually see the law enforcement lobby in a much darker, more sinister light after this event than I did before. Before I thought they were just protecting their interest, and now I'm not so sure where the values of those people are. I'm very skeptical of the values of law enforcement lobbyists after this event.
And we're hearing that also from ex-law enforcement officers in the organization LEAP, Law Enforcement Against Prohibition, who come out and say this is hurting everybody, officers included.
Diane
Because-
Goldstein spoke yesterday very strongly against the conference and what was going on in there. I wish to God that she could have been in there and speaking to them directly because what she said made so much sense.
Diane Goldstein is a
officer.
LEAP officer. Actually, she's a LEAP. She's an officer with the organization LEAP, but she is an ex-officer
From
with
Redondo
Cap-
Beach,
From
yeah.
Redondo
She
Beach.
sits on the board
And a
for LEAP.
commander, and very well spoken, and really has taken her law enforcement agencies to task for the way that they are dealing with it, because she's seen it from the inside, and she's a moral logical thinker, and she sees how this is destroying not only patients' lives, but the institutions of law enforcement as well, hurting them. And so these people, as gentle as we might want to be with them, they are doing bad things. And as advocates, as patients, as people looking forward to legal marijuana, adults looking forward to that, you need to get involved. You need to be active. You need to know what's going on in your state, locally, nationally, and you need to really get involved with organizations. That is the only way we will be able to fight back against some of these organizations.
We need an army.
We need an
army, and we don't have it.
gathering.
And there's a lot of people out there that could just come out of the woodwork, just come out and say, I'm a medical marijuana patient. I stand for this. Call your representatives and tell them, please, don't let them do this to us. We need to have the freedom to medicate. We need the freedom to be able to use marijuana in the way that it's supposed to be used, as medicine. And here in California, that's what the law says, medical. So that's how we're supposed to be using it. And people don't get out and come and support and call your legislators. Stuff will never happen. This is crazy. I can't believe that 18 years later, we're still fighting discrimination in the state of California. We were the first ones that were the last now.
We are lagging behind as far as organizing the industries. Let's take a little break. We'll come back. We'll do a little more talking about some other issues that are going on, and we'll finish up with this, and we'll see you after the break.
You are listening to the John Lovitz Vodcast Network.
Upcoming shows to the John Lovitz Vodcast Network.
Welcome to FYI. It's Dimitri Young here with Robert Fick. Hey everybody, welcome to Talking Marijuana.
Hi everybody, Crabman's Rock and Roll Revival featuring Frazier Smith is on the air, in your hair, and going out everywhere around the world.
I'm Gary Garver, live from the John Lovitz Comedy Club.
This is the John Lovitz Vodcast Network.
Hi, John Lovitz here. It's time to put laughter back into your life. Check out the John Lovitz Comedy Club, located in the heart of Universal Studios City Walk, Los Angeles, not Orlando. For tickets, go to thejohnlovitzcomedyclub.com.
You are listening to the John Lovitz Vodcast Network.
And welcome back to Talking Marijuana. We are, by the way, recording out of the John Lovitz Vodcast Theater studio in the John Lovitz Comedy Theater here at Universal
City Walk. Beautiful Universal City Walk.
We love this. This is great. We're your hosts. I'm Barry Kramer.
I'm Yami Bolaños, and from Sacramento, we have Richard Miller and Sherry Martinez.
And we have Don Duncan in Washington
all the
on
way
the
from
phone.
Washington, D.C.
Just to catch you all up with who you're
watching.
watching. Rich, Sherry, what brought you to Rancho Cucamonga? You guys, we've talked about what literally brought you there, but what's a little bit of your past? What do you do in Sacramento? You're activists in Sacramento?
I started in San Francisco in the early 90s with Dennis Perone and the San Francisco Buyers Club and AIDS patients going back to the early 90s when my uncle had
I would
struck
say
with AIDS.
one of the founders of our movement here. I mean, that's when things started here in California.
Yeah, I started the rally process way back then, and I continued to fight for cancer and AIDS patients. After I lost my uncle and my best friend from cancer, I knew the importance of medical marijuana, and what I should do is give back. So since that period, I've continued to give back. In 2006, I moved up to the Sacramento region, and I have focused on that region ever since.
Was that because the laws are made in Sacramento? You felt you'd be closer to the advocacy work that you wanted to do?
I just thought I should get out of the community because that community was being taken care of, and I wanted to get into other communities, and
San
I just
Francisco
wanted to get out of the city and
absolutely.
just get back to the basics of life and do what I could to help other communities. Since then, I've been involved in Sacramento with several different organizations, from the chairman of the Sacramento ASA chapter, Safe Access Sacramento, Crusaders for Patients' Rights, their patient advocacy director. I also run a organization in Placer County called Health Education and Legal Patients' Rights, and work with AAMC in El Dorado County, and participate in Nevada County with Patricia Smith's ASA organization up there. So I've pretty much been in the 5-county region area around Sacramento and just working on patients' rights and making the public aware and trying to do what I could to give back to the patients.
Awesome.
A true classic warrior.
Thank you so
Yes,
much for
thank
your
you,
work
Richard.
and your efforts that you've done over the years.
It's no
Just
work.
always
It's a
think-
passion of love. And
It's
a love for the
fantastic.
plant. I know the healing effects of the plant. I understand the importance of CBDs and THC and CBNs, and the public needs to be made aware of it. And it's our responsibility as those that know about it to educate those that don't.
Exactly.
I think one of the main thrusts of our Vodcast here, and we talk about it almost every week, is education. There's not, we can't go further without educating people,
No.
and those are our adversaries.
Yes.
And they're also the people that
We're-
are on our side that
Exactly.
don't understand the seriousness of the situation. Education is going to move this movement
Yes.
forward, and so we appreciate all your efforts.
It's always what's moved this country forward, and we've got to continue to move forward. 60% of all our medications prior to 1940 had cannabis in it. They
Yeah.
knew the importance of it back then. Why can't we realize it today? Even in the Library of Congress, they have a book, which I hold a copy of it, that was printed for the Library of Congress in 1909, that says exactly what the medical definition of cannabis is and what its uses are.
Really?
So for the government to say that they're not aware of that is ludicrous. They have it in their own libraries. They choose not
They
to
choose
see it.
not
It's
to.
a decision they've made. And it's time for us to stand up and fight for what we believe in and educate the public so they're aware of really what it's all about.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Richard, for your struggle. You're a warrior up there,
Yeah.
Even before I went to Sacramento, I knew all about you.
And Sherry, what brings you to, what do you do in Sacramento?
I
What do
am
you-
just a local activist of many causes.
There's no such thing as just a local.
Well, yeah, one.
You
Now I'm
are
in
a
Rancho
local-
Cucamonga, LA now, so
Now you're a
I've never been to
statewide
Universal Studios or anything down here.
Awesome.
So I'm just loving it.
Well, that's what it
really-
takes. It takes stepping into the ring. It's not difficult.
Right.
We're just chatting
You
here.
know, and-
You were just hanging out yesterday with like-minded people.
Yes.
And it really, Sherry has stepped into what many of you need to step into,
Exactly.
which is, putting your money where your mouth is.
Yeah, standing up for our rights and what I believe in, and I believe the police should be upholding the law, not making it, right?
Absolutely,
So
absolutely.
we have to
You're
keep-
really active in Sacramento, though, too.
I get
you do a
around.
lot
Yeah,
of
I do a
stuff.
lot for
Yeah.
the animals. I'm on the board for Pit Bulls Against Misinformation. So there's again educating
Education.
people about stuff, and cannabis is just I'm a patient myself, and I suffered. I had a stroke, and I had to relearn how to do everything. Cannabis is my medicine, and it's gotten me here today.
And we're so glad you're here, honey.
And it's opened so many doors for you and will continue to open doors for you.
That's good. We hope so. Across the country, we're gearing up for 2014. I don't know if you guys hear stuff up in Sacramento. Don, I'm sure you're always hearing about this as you travel from Sacramento to Washington and all points north and south. And I know that I read an article this week about Alaska and Oregon coming on board in 2014 with legal marijuana. Now, lots can happen before that election occurs, but it looks to me, as I study this article, that these two states have decided not to wait till 2016 when it's a presidential election, and many advocates feel more people come out to the
vote.
polls, so there's a greater chance of being able to bring your constituency out to vote for marijuana legalization. But these two states and the advocates in those states have kind of looked at it really hard, and they feel that they're ready to come on in 2014. They feel the momentum in the country, and there is quite a bit of momentum in the country.
Right.
And
We know Alaska's been back and forth, haven't they? Because they were an
Yeah.
early decrim state, along with California. And
Yeah.
then they tightened up again, and now it looks like they're ready to loosen up again. So that's great.
So we're looking forward. It's going to be an interesting run in 2014 and seeing who puts it on the ballot. I know we have people in California here that would like to put it on the ballot. I'm not sure that they've garnered enough support for that at this point.
Sure, ballot initiatives in big states are different than ballot initiatives in small states. So, they're not always, it's apples and oranges.
Right.
So, we wish them the best of luck. I mean, I think the conventional wisdom would say an election year, a general election year, would be the better choice.
Because of the
But,
turnout.
the circumstances in those states may be different. So if they're ready to go, they should make
And we
it
wish
happen.
them good luck in Alaska
Yes, we
and
do.
Oregon.
Good luck.
And we're going to finish up the Vodcast here with one of our favorite segments, Dope of the Week. Dope of the Week. And this week we got he's such a good candidate. We might have to put them all together and have a contest
At the
of
end of
Dope
the year,
of the Year
Dope
for
of the
something.
Year, yeah.
So this week's Dope of the Week is Deputy Daryl Mathis from Atlanta, Georgia. An undercover sting operation nabbed an Atlanta area sheriff's deputy who was selling marijuana out of his patrol car in uniform, federal authorities say. Totally busted by undercover agents. I'm just going to read you some of the great excerpts from this. According to the charges against him, Mathis attracted attention of the FBI in April with what officials called a social visit by a person who went on to become a confidential informant. That informant visited Mathis at his apartment, saw a lot of marijuana there, and then went back to the people that he was working for in law enforcement and said, "Hey, this guy's got his shit ton of marijuana."
That's the marijuana on
Well,
the
he
kitchen
wasn't an
table.
informant, so he did his job well. And then they launched a whole other undercover sting against this guy. And I'll sort of truncate it a little bit. In June, as the undercover agent bought a pound of pot from Mathis, he boasted, "Yeah, I do my little 10 to 15 a week." A phrase that the agent understood to mean that he was selling 10 to 15 pounds a week. In early August, according to the complaint, he met with another undercover agent, a supposed cocaine dealer, and then they were talking about what they were going to transporting marijuana and cocaine. And while they were speaking, Mathis allegedly pulled out his badge and told the undercover agent, "Don't worry, I'm on your side."
Oh, my.
By the end of the meeting, the complaint alleges Mathis had agreed to run marijuana and cocaine from Alabama to North Carolina at the behest of the undercover agent. Cha-ching! Off to jail goes one more policeman. So, Dope of the Week.
Dope of the Week. What an idiot.
With Paul Rudd,
He was a
where
good
the
one.
The same scenario went down, except in that movie it was funny.
Yeah, well, they do that in Hollywood. They make these stories funny. Hey, it's that time again. We're at the end of another wonderful Gab Fest here on Talking Marijuana. Thank you so much for staying in town and talking with us on the show today and letting us know what's going on in
And
Sacramento.
an honor to have you here, Richard.
Thank you.
Don, we'll see you next week. And
Thanks so
We'll
much.
be here next week, huh, baby?
Pura vida.
Pura vida.
You are listening to the John Lovitz Vodcast Network.
Upcoming shows to the John Lovitz Vodcast Network.
Welcome to FYI. It's Dimitri Young here with Robert Fick. Hey, everybody, welcome to Talking Marijuana.
Hi, everybody. Crabman's Rock and Roll Revival featuring Frazier Smith is on the air, in your hair, and going out everywhere around the world.
I'm Gary Garver, live from the John Lovitz Comedy Club.
This is the John Lovitz Vodcast Network.